with the arts, like it's always been about kicking down the door. There's not really a path you can turn around and go, oh, I got to go to school, I'm going to become an artist, then I'm going to go out, I'm going to get a job as a visual artist, and then, you know, later on down the track, I'm going to retire, and there's going to be like a superannuation sitting there, and it's like, you know, and everything's great. I've just bought a house. It's the right people around the right time. So, you know, basically it's sort of like you seriously need to be going, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to see it through. You know, I've got to do it for myself.
A lot of the times we don't consider it. We don't think about our journey. You know, we just think about where we are now and where we're going. Right?
I think it is one of those things that like creative fields, you're always looking forward. Like you don't really have much time to sort of look back and sort of go, oh, it was a great time, because it's sort of like that was past.
Yeah. And it's something that you've banked in, and a lot of it has contributed to who you are now, but you don't really acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Especially like when you're saying as artists, because you go on this journey and, you know, especially like with you, you've been in it for quite a while. It changes, right? Like the concepts behind it, the aesthetic, the applications, all of it evolves and changes as you change.
Well, I think you've got it because it's like, you know, you're developing as a person through also your artwork as well. Like I look at some of the work that I've done in the past. Like there's one of like my really, really early works hanging at Fad Gallery in the city. Far out, man, that's a spin out to say. How
does it make you feel when you see it now?
It gives a sense of like this nostalgia. Like you sit there and just going, like you do remember the whereabouts and what was happening at that time in your life. But it's just like far out. Like that's 25, 26 years ago. And it's like so much from there to now is like even your work, it's like it develops. Like it's so different, but it's kind of like wouldn't want to go back to that style as well.
No, it's just that evolution, that process. Yeah,
it's kind of like you don't want to sort of step back and sort of like try and redo what you've already done. And it's kind of hard too. I will admit I've tried in the past, and it's kind of like you sort of. No, it looks shit. I think that's the easiest thing to say about it. It just doesn't look that great. It doesn't carry out because I think a lot of the work I've done has been sort of like spur of the moment. So it's sort of building up and building up and building up, and sort of like, you know, just kind of one step away from being an action painting. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it's always just been about that process and that experimentation. Yeah. And that's the thing with art, is that like it's nice to have those little markers and those little mementos of those moments as well. So when you have that painting that's hanging up there, it's like it might not aesthetically look like what you wouldn't look like what you would do now.
Yeah.
But it's nice to know that once upon a time that was the bee's knees for you. You know, that was the shit.
Yeah, you sort of sit there going, oh, this is great. Is this going to change the world?
Designers are like that as well, man. Like I would look back at some of the logo designs that I did, and at the time, like, they're gonna love it. They're gonna love it, and I'm like looking at it now, like, oh god.
Do you ever find it's like even with like doing logos and things like that? So there is a sort of like a timestamp within some of it. You sort of go, well, that was definitely the 90s, or that was definitely the 2000s, or that was definitely teens, and sort of go through and just go that pinpoints that period.
Yes and no. I think it. Well, I'm just speaking from experience.
Yeah.
You draw your influences from what's around you, right? So it's whatever's on trend is going to be more in your face at the time.
Oh yeah.
So I try to, these days, when I say these days, I mean like, I guess like as you've matured, you start to recognize what is trendy, and then how to then take something and make it a bit more timeless as well, and try it. But then it really just depends. Sometimes people just want something on trend.
Do you find like that you go through these periods in your life where you actually sort of like you outsource ideas So you look at other people, then you actually start sort of like after a while just going, no, I want to do more me.
Yeah, but that takes time. Wouldn't you think that, like, because you're an accumulation of all your experiences, right? So if all you know is just one way, it's hard to even think about stepping away from that. Like you don't even know to step away from that.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to consciously decide, firstly, I want to break away from where I'm at. And then after that, think, where do I go now? What am I going to be turning to? And so from design, what's really good is a Canva. Have you ever used Canva?
No.
Yeah. So what I love about Canva is that it lifts the floor of what is good design, right?
Yeah.
So it's cut out a lot of the shit that's out there, and Canva at the moment is very on trend.
Right.
So it sets a tone in saying that this is what looks nice now.
Yeah.
And it does. But then what happens is that a lot of people adopt that particular style, and it kind of just dilutes the essence of it. So it just doesn't feel like anything anymore. It just feels like what's popular. Right. It doesn't communicate anything. Like, so let's say, like, in design and art, there's shapes and colors communicate something, right? But then when everyone starts using the same shapes and the same colors, it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
So with Canva is that they've established the baseline saying that this is the minimum of what you should expect as good design. So everyone that falls below that is out. So anyone that is just going to be designing things that are trendy, you're obsolete now because there's a tool, Canva, that people that are non-designers can go and use.
Yeah.
So then what that does is that it forces the industry as a whole to up their game. You have to start finding different ways to differentiate yourself and to differentiate the work that you do for your clients. And then it forces you to push boundaries and just to start exploring in different areas. If you're a designer that isn't great at exploring and experimenting and pushing boundaries of design, if you're going to be one that's just like you'll see trends and you follow trends, then you're going to be obsolete.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No. Well, obviously that's the same with art. Like, it is that sort of time signatures where it's like, as soon as you actually start sort of following whatever the trend is, it's 10 years down the track. It's kind of like that was then.
Yeah, but the good thing about with art is that you're constantly always being forced to grow and to evolve and to experience life, right? Like, if you're just too much in your art, it's just going to move in one linear direction. You have to go and live outside of your art to be able to then put back into your art.
It's all about the experiences of life. Like, I don't think that I would be doing what I'm doing if I hadn't actually sort of gone to the places I've been. And sort of seen things. It may actually not have been like effective at the time. Like, being in New York, there was things which I had seen or wanted to see, but it's sort of like there's other things that were going on, on the side, which now it's sort of like, obviously there's a bit of an Egyptian motif in my work. So it's sort of kind of like they're things that I'm actually taking interest now, but wasn't then. Mm-hmm. So it's I think I just got sidetracked.
This is the conversations. The whole point is just to get sidetracked. It's just a riff anyway. But it is cool how, like, something that you had come across at some point, it might not even resonate with you at the time, but then it'll come back and I guess like introduce itself in a different way. Yeah. And then like, I can actually use something that was in the back of my brain however many years ago.
I think it's also your focus as well. Like, back then you sort of like what probably might be the same sort of thing. Like, you focus in wanting to be like this, and you're forcing yourself into this sort of category, like sort of say pop art, and the back of your head it's not what you're meant to be doing. But because everyone else is doing it, you're sort of like, I really want to do this, like because it's super cool and it's what's happening. And then later on down the track, you're sort of going, it just became wallpaper to everyone else.
Do you find that those type of the labels that you give to art, because like looking into your work, a lot of people have described it, like they've given it these labels, right? Like surrealism, Dadaism, all that, whatever it may be, right? Like, do you find that when you have these labels, it just minimizes the complexity, but not even the complexity, but it kind of just narrows the scope of what the work is. Like, can't it just be that? Can't it just be Josh Lord work? Does it have to be, influenced by this, influenced by that, and like labeled this or that?
I think in one part they're trying to make it palatable for other people. Like that's one thing. Like, if you can identify sort of saying, oh, it's like Dadaism, so people can go, oh, well, I understand that. Mm-hmm. It's kind of that parallels with something. But in all aspect, I don't know where those labels come from. Like it wouldn't. I think art is always hard to sort of like to describe, because it's a visual thing, or visual arts. Like, it's a visual thing. It's all in the names. So it's kind of hard to sort of turn around and go, well, it's part of the surrealist movement, or it's part of Dadaism, or it's decollage, or it's this, or it's that. It's sort of like, how can I say it? It's like it's kind of like throwaway comments. It reduces the strength of what it is. So that's to me, like, it sort of feels like it sort of reduces that strength of basically going, okay, well, it has its own entity.
Yeah, because then you would just be comparing it to works of that genre, right? Like, and if it's not something that you intended for it to be, then they'll be making that comparison, saying, well, it's not as good as that. It's not as good as this. Like, well, it wasn't meant to be.
Do you remember like, how long back? Like, it would have been the 2000s. Like, everyone compared everything to Banksy. Like, it was this thing. It's like that go-to name where you sort of like go, okay, well, I do art, and then someone goes, oh, he does work like Banksy. It's like, where? What part? What are you looking at?
It was definitely groundbreaking, because when Banksy just became a thing, then it was he. Don't know if it's a he. Just who knows? It might not even be one person. It could just be a collective. They call it they. They broke into mainstream. Everyone knew Banksy, and then Banksy just became synonymous with art of that time, right? So then, and we were discussing about how stencil work just became synonymous with having some kind of like political message, political agenda, or some sort of commentary or narrative of what was happening at the time.
Well, he popularized a lot of things that were already going on, like the punk movement. Like,
that's right.
You sort of see there's a guy called John Yates who worked with Jello Biafra from Dead Kennedys, and he was doing all these sort of like political sort of slogans. And there's a Kennard, I think his name's Kennedy, in the UK. And you sort of see like these political slogans and these little motifs, which, were like Banksy ripped off. Like, I wouldn't say ripped off, but he developed into his own thing.
Yeah. So the punk movement it's most definitely influenced by that movement. Influenced or whatever, but there's parallels.
Yeah, it's like the punk movement was actually, graffiti on the walls back in the 70s and 80s. And it was then adopted into different things in the New York scenes. And then basically, so, the metamorphosis of it, like, or the evolution of it. And, then you sort of see these guys who come up, and sort of the stencil artists that sort of go, well, a lot of their slogans and ideas come directly from these other people. Like even Barbara Kruger. So if you sort of see a lot of her words going into other people's work these days. And Banksy was, you can see that you can see the influence from these people and what they were talking about to how it became popularized. And it could be also the fact that sort of like so many people could already identify, because it's always in that peripheral vision. Yeah. So they're basically sort of, they start recognizing it and going, oh, here it comes, comes again, but in a newer form.
With your work, tell me about the process and the thought process behind it, because visually it looks great. There's a lot of contrast. There's a lot of iconography that is sometimes explicit, sometimes not. The juxtaposition of one and another might be a little bit unclear. Like, you have something like the skull represents this, and then next to it there'd be like a Disney-esque type bunny, right? Like, talk to me about what's the thought process behind it, and why?
All right. So first off, like obviously the backgrounds where it sort of kind of looks like ripped posters.
Yeah.
It was first off found it really like have you heard like an artist called Wolf Vostelli, who was the first artist I saw who did the decollage, and it was like wow. So there's all these bits and pieces of information going on there. So you'd have this layer of like a Coca-Cola symbol, and then underneath you can sort of just make out like people's faces. So you've got this information, this parts going here and there. I really loved it. I wasn't very good at the start, but then I sort of developed that obviously you need to build up and build up and build up and build up without it being actual posters. So I didn't want to go down that path. I wanted to actually make it so it looks like a painting but doesn't look like a painting.
So instead of using actual collage, you'll be painting the collage.
Yeah. So it would be layers upon layers, and then what I'd do is I'd actually sort of use these scraping tools and start pulling it back.
Right.
So that would be the first part. So basically it's sort of like it gives it sort of that flow. So it looks like an old wall. So you can probably sort of see it down the street with the ripped posters or aging posters, whatever. And then I wanted to put like because I think the whole thing of beauty skin deep sort of thing, it really sort of resonated with me. So I wanted to put these skulls in it, sort of like, so there's that kind of element of memento mori, we're all going to go at some point. But I don't want it to be as harsh. So then there's these cartoon characters come into it. So it's like, ah. So it's got that element of like,
We're all going to die, but life is good.
Yeah,
life is happy.
It's a fairy tale, man.
That's funny. Oh, well, not at all funny. But it's interesting how you've introduced that memento mori a bit about how, that is, we are going to die. There is, life is finite, but it's not about that being dire and morbid.
No.
Yeah. It's just it is what it is.
Exactly. It's like what you can leave behind too as well.
Yeah.
Like that whole thing of like the skull, obviously with no skin on it. There's been work that I've been trying to play around with for a long time. It's like you're a scalpel away from being the face of today. So there's all these sort of like dark motifs underneath it, but done in such a like bright, colourful sort of imagery. And then there's this like the cartoon characters, little bunnies and things like that. It's just kind of like I find it really like funny that you've got all these like dark things, but then on top of it, it's just like, oh, that's so pretty.
So it does. It's a conflicting feeling when you're seeing some of your work.
The yin and yang.
Yeah, and you know what's good? Your work, the way that has been put together, I think it would be really fitting to have in people's homes, right? Because in a home, there is a sense of order to it. Yeah. So people like to, it doesn't have to be tidy, but there is order to how they want to live. Or maybe it's not at all tidy, but I can imagine that the people that would be appreciating your work also have an appreciation for order and tidiness. And what draws them to your work is that it's a balanced composition, but first impression that it feels disorderly. Yeah. Yeah? Do you know what I mean?
It's chaos and clarity.
Yeah.
It's like Cezanne, you like. I don't know if you know that reference, but
no.
It's like you do these paintings where it's like you spin.
Yeah. Well, no, that's the thing. There is that balance, when you say that chaos, clarity, death, life, morbid, happiness.
Yeah.
So when you have that piece of work up in a home where everything else could be clean, polished, and has a sense of, I guess, like balance and alignment, you see that, and then there's just that juxtaposition there. I've
got to say, it's really good to be invited to some like the people who have bought my work.
Yeah, and
to their house. It's like Colin Hyatt, who's bought quite a few of my works. Sort of like his home is just this amazing place, but then you sort of see like skulls and bunnies on his wall, and it's like this wall, like this painting which is taking up I think most of his dining room, and it's it looks like it's been all torn apart.
Yeah,
like,
that's cool.
Just brutal. But it's like this beauty, but then there's this like chaos and clarity on his wall.
Yeah. I like the concept of decollage. And it's something that I've been thinking about, not so much, not specifically decollage, but about removing things to be able to reveal more, right? Like how, when speaking with Sahil, and that's the process that he's going at, is about just trying to remove a lot of the things that don't complement or accentuate the main thing that he's trying to achieve. So he's, you know, it was about like amplifying what works and removing what doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. So that's, you know, the decollage, where you have a process of stripping things back to reveal more, but in the process of stripping things back, it's actually kind of creating that chaos.
Yeah. Well, it also creates this sort of fragmentation. So it fragments it to a such degree where it's like, you know, you got little bits and pieces here and there. So it takes a bit more time to have a look at.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, you got bits and pieces going on here and there, but it's it creates more of interest.
There's a lot of interest, and that's the thing I like about with your work. You can look around it and find other bits, and then when you find something, you can find a complementary piece. Do you know one of the worst parts about that? Like, because obviously that, you know, they're big works. Yeah.
Is taking photographs and putting out something like Instagram.
You lose scale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they'll see the main image and then they'll go, oh right, so that's a face or it's a skull. But there's so much more going on around it, and it's sort of like seeing it or experiencing it in real life. It's a different sort of scenario, and it's sort of like, you know, you've got so much more layers to it. I think the first time I met, is it Chico? Yeah. He was sort of having a chat to me. He goes, I didn't realise it's sort of that you actually paint this. He goes, I thought it was just all torn paper. It's just like, no, man, it's like it's all scraped back. And he goes, there's so much more going on.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to achieve from these. It's like so people actually have to go up to it and look at it.
What was the rationale behind actually painting it rather than doing it more organically?
I think it's because I found the challenge.
Okay.
It was challenging. It's like nothing against dudes and girls who basically, you know, rip posters. I think it looks great, but to me, I found it really easy, and I wanted to go obviously the hard route, but it also gives you the ability to control what was going on. Yeah. I found personally that when doing it, like with paper and gluing it and ripping it and things like that, there is a sense of randomness, or you have to do it really stylized.
Yeah, I think the randomness that's intentional for those that do it that way.
Yeah, so what I looked at first is like, obviously going back to Vostelli, is that he's taken literally street posters, ripped them off walls in such a mad sense, and then stuck them onto boards and put them in a gallery. Yeah. Which I think there's another guy, sort of Raymond Haynes, who does the same thing. It's like, and just looking at their work, it's just it has that sense of like nostalgia or period of that era. Mm-hmm. You sort of see all those street posters of that period of time, and it's like, yeah, that's great.
It is like a time capsule, isn't it? Because when you can pull back the layers, you can see what had previously existed in that space.
Yeah. I think also, like, if you look at it, like getting a chance to sort of see some of these artworks in real life, they're massive.
Okay.
And that's
what, your pieces, you mean?
No, like Raymond Haynes and things like that. It's like he does these metal panels, and they look in photographs they look small, but in real life they're massive. Like, they're really big, and it's sort of kind of like the industrial water lilies. So it's got that industrialism about it. Do you know the water lilies that is it Monet?
The Monet, yeah.
Yeah. The water lilies are massive, like they're huge.
Right.
So, but you sort of see these decollage rip posters. They sort of have that like the opposite end of it.
Yeah.
So something beautiful turns into something just really bad. the nightmare of afterwards.
I wonder when you were saying about sense of scale and how when you're putting things up on Instagram, it loses a lot of the context, right? I wonder how much, like, art is heavily contextualized, right? Like, the art in itself is more of the conduit for the experience of the art, right? So, like, it's almost as if that experiencing the artwork is the art.
Yeah.
And when we now in this era of artists having to showcase work on social media, that's a non-negotiable. You have to have a social media presence.
You do, but you don't have to really post on it as well.
No?
Not really. I'm not putting anything on there at the moment of the new work.
Oh, well, not yet, but you still have a presence. You still have own a space there, and you know, like that's the first place that people are gonna discover you, right?
Sure.
So if they're going to discover, like I would, like some of the images of the works that you've been working on, when you're telling me how big they are, I lose that entirely when you just show me on a device. And so I'm wondering, like with artists, especially with artists like you, that where the work is heavily based on context and the place that it's going to be viewed in, and also just the experience of being in front of it, how much you lose of just seeing it on a device, but then whether or not you would ever really consider creating work to be more accommodating for how it's now experienced?
I think no. Because like if you start making stuff as an Instagram, say for instance, you're just going to have to constantly sort of be chasing that. And I want to sort of make the work in like an impact. So when you go to a show, you sort of you can look at it and go, wow, you know, the scale, the absorbing into that exhibition can actually sort of work a lot better than actually just going, oh, I'm just going to place another photograph up, you know, 5-second job.
Yeah, so it's just going to be done in a more, I guess, like in an inventive, creative way, just to say that this is a taster. But you know, if you want,
well, yeah, I tried sort of like in the last, I'd say like since 2010, try to actually get away from just the normal doing exhibition with works on the wall. So I started inviting bands and things like that along to exhibit with me.
Yeah.
First one, I think it was Kate Buck, who's a punk, like an old punker from the 70s. And we had a better talk, and she's sort of going, so what do you want to do? And sort of going, I just want it to be very uncomfortable. And she's like, okay, what do you mean? I was like, just uncomfortable. So there was a kind of like My Bloody Valentine mixed with all these different things. And then they turned up to the exhibition with guitars, toy pianos, all these sort of things. It's just like...
making noise.
Turned into fucking chaos. I had some dudes from this other gallery just down there just going... And then afterwards going, dude, I want this in my gallery.
Yeah.
This is fucking cool.
It makes sense, man, because your work has a sense of unease to it. There's a lot, because, well, firstly, there's a lot of that contrast, a lot of the juxtapositioning of various elements.
Yeah.
And thematically, it's also something that you got to, like, you know, like we were saying, that you got to tussle with.
Yeah.
So just looking at the work, that feeling of unease, and then having music also just to accompany that or to heighten it, creates this whole new different experience of the work entirely.
I think my favourite one was on St Kilda Road, 2014 or 16. I ended up having like two like pioneers of electronic music. They played a show prior to that with me at the Docklands, and then I asked them to come along again. And in the meantime, I actually spoke to a mate of mine, Wade, and sort of said, hey man, do you want to do this show? And he's just like, yeah, sure. He goes, can we do whatever we want? It's like, don't smash my art. So he came along and he brought his band Collapse along, and we actually had cars slowing down just to see what was going on.
Jeez.
That's how loud it was. The roof was shaking. the windows were just like coming like out. It was amazing.
Do you use music as an influence for your work?
Yeah. I'm listening to a lot of noise.
To noise?
Yeah, like noise. Sort of, I wouldn't say like pop music. So it's more experimental.
Okay.
So sometimes I'll listen to something which just sounds like a jackhammer.
Right.
And you do have to be in the mood for it. Because
what's that mood?
well, it's kind of like it's a bit meditational.
Yeah, okay.
So it will get to that point where it's sort of like you just sort of in a bit of your own headspace. But if you're not in the mood, it can be absolutely brutal.
I can imagine that shit. So it's not white noise?
Sometimes I listen to white noise. So, sometimes.
Yeah, okay.
But some of it is just basically, it's like I'll listen to it like heavy industrial, but then go into sort of like really sort of like just a noise.
Right, okay. So is it... I'm likening that to a sense of when there's something playing and it's just scratching the back of your brain.
Pretty much.
Okay, that's what you're going for.
Yeah, it's just kind of it sends you into a sort of meditational state, which is fantastic. But if you are not in that mood,
yeah,
it can get you really frustrated. It's just like, get me the fuck out of here.
It's like walking around all day in a pair of shoes with a rock in it, where you can just like accept it and just go with it.
Yeah. But the thing, like, it has that feeling of like you get to a certain point where you just feel calm.
Calm, yeah.
You don't like. I find if you listen to sort of say like some like music, which is basically lyrics and normal 4/4 beat, you can really sort of like it takes you out because you're concentrating on that.
I agree.
And if you listen to something which is a structured song, it's like, you know, you start sort of going, oh, hang on, I want to listen to this now.
Okay.
But if you're listening to something which is basically just sort of like buzzing the fucking back of your head, you sit there just like going, I'm going to concentrate on that.
I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to give this, maybe not the jackhammer. I think that feels like it's advanced level. Yeah. I might go with like,
I'll send you something.
Ocean waves. Okay, send me something.
I've actually made some of it myself. Like, I'm actually performing next month.
What are you performing?
I'm performing with a
jackhammer.
No. I'm actually performing with a buddy of mine, Ash Wednesday, who is part of Neubauten, a German industrial band, and worked with Nina Hagen and all that. Like, he's a pretty well-known electronic musician in Melbourne.
Yeah. So
he was part of this. He got invited to a drone festival after him and I did music for the last show. Mm-hmm. And he went, and the guy, I think his name's Daniel, he was sort of saying, oh, do you want to use some of Josh's artwork in there? It's like, and he goes, well, actually, Josh is likes doing this music as well. Do you want to get him involved? It's like, I didn't know that. He goes, there's actually, he's got his own band camp.
Do you play?
Yeah.
What do you play?
I play guitar, but with a massive amount of pedals.
Oh, right.
So it's like a wall of sound.
Cool. Okay.
So it's a lot of fun. It's a good way to piss your neighbours off.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So, because I don't actually do it in the studio. But yeah, I started getting into it. I played in the 90s, and I had a guy who sort of said, oh, you got to choose, like, you know, either do the visual arts or the music. You can always come back to one later down the track. And I was just like, oh, okay. He goes, you got to be good at one thing.
Why do you have to choose? I don't understand.
Well, because you're putting too much into so many things.
Oh, wait, as in like professionally?
Yeah.
Ah, yeah.
So you're sort of saying, you know, you've got to choose between those two. Like, you know, do either your artwork or do your music.
Yeah.
He goes, because you can't just sort of like, you know, put too many hands in too many pots.
Can you not float between the two and then just use the creativity from one can just bleed and permeate into the other as well?
I think it's like one of the things you're sort of saying, he goes, you can always come back to it.
Yeah.
You know, but you want to sort of set yourself up as in this one thing. Mm-hmm. And then build yourself up, and then you can always come back into it and sort of start working and, you know, collaborating it, or sort of introduce it into your work.
Yeah, okay.
Which it sort of made sense. Like, you know, go and put yourself out there. Like, you know, be the best at one thing, and don't try and sort of put your hand in too many pies, and then basically sort of like go, oh well, why is everything so wishy washy?
Okay. Yeah, I that's probably a good approach. I didn't do it that way, and also with regret as well.
Because the thing is, it's like if you put yourself or you place yourself into that, like I know a lot of people going, don't put all your eggs into one basket, but you don't want to just be like okay at everything. You want to be sort of like, okay, this is me.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, it's like, then they go, oh, well, you know, this dude actually plays music as well. It's like, what?
I guess it does require a certain amount of dedication to be able to, firstly, become excellent. Well, not even excellent, just to be good at something. It requires a certain amount of dedication and a lot of perseverance.
And a lot of practice.
A lot of practice, yeah. So just to be able to, when you say put your eggs in one basket, it's not necessarily a conscious decision saying that this is what I want to do, but it's more of a, it is a practice, and it is a dedication to growth and to the process.
Yeah. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's like with music, it can be that thing where you start going in with other members. You know, if you start doing that and you go, oh, no, I've got to go and paint now.
Oh, yeah.
I've got this is amount of time. You're going to have to start spreading it really thin. And that was one of the things. It's like, okay, well, I want to do the visual arts. I'm going to take off and go and do that. So it was that. And now I think it was like when I started working with a lot of the Melbourne punks, it was kind of like, I wouldn't mind going back to it. So I did study a little bit of music back in the day. Like I was studying sort of piano and guitar and a few other things. And it was kind of like, it is a bit of a hard, like it's a lot of dedication to it.
Yeah. And
I don't think like painting, when you look at it, is kind of easy comparison to that.
Oh, maybe for you, man. I don't know if that kind of works for everybody.
Well, yeah, like I've met a lot of people who are classical musicians, and it's kind of second nature to them. It's just like, fuck, I hate you. I used to know a lot of people who took the music route and started bands and went Triple J and all that sort of stuff, and they were like really amazing artists and very good at photorealism, but they sort of went, okay, well, you know, this took off.
I think that we do have that propensity to be good artists, and I think a big part of being a good artist, when you say like, so musicians, it translates well because they're I guess like they have a tool, an instrument that they are at the mercy of, right? Yeah. Like you have to play what the instrument allows you to play, so you're always going to be experimenting and growing with this instrument, and you're also have this acceptance that there is this room to evolve and to develop, and you're going to be shit. Yeah. So you've got this freedom to express and the freedom just to fuck around with it.
Would you say passion or obsession? Because a lot of it comes down to like they're fucking obsessed, man.
Yeah.
Like they get really obsessed. It's like, you know, just that dedication. It's sort of like
but it's there's this willingness to just let go and to do it, and that's art, right? Like if you're going to be like a visual artist, I guess like with all forms of art, is just this willingness just to fucking put it out there, whatever the result may be, and then you just get on with the next one and the next one and the next one, and you keep on evolving and growing from there. And that's the thing with art. Like if you're just going to be so reserved and you've got this fear of not wanting to fuck it up, then you just won't do it. And then if you do it, it's going to be with some reservation.
I think it's that fear of fucking up that will come in. Like everyone goes through that. Like they have that feeling like, you know, shit, I don't want to fuck this up. I want to actually make it good. I want to try and emulate this. But you do get to that exhaustion point where you just go, fuck it, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
No one cares.
Yeah.
And then that's when you like find that true sense of yourself. Because it's like you're no longer putting the pretense on. You're not trying to impress someone. You're not trying to sort of like be someone else.
Yeah.
You actually sort of start realizing, you know, that who fucking cares? Because the thing is, it's like you're not. I think it's the fact is so if you're no longer trying to impress people, you're just doing it for you.
Yeah.
And you can actually have a lot of fun. So you can actually take that and go, okay, well, I'll go somewhere else with it.
That's an important trait that's really hard to learn. And that's actually something that I've been thinking about for the last like couple of days as well. Just speaking with my wife about like, what are the things that would hold me back, or not, it doesn't even just apply to me, but just with a lot of people, like what are the things that hold you back, and what are the things that will encourage you to move forward, right? Like how much of your drive is attached to the success, to praise, right? Like that external validation.
There is a lot of that. Like, how old are you?
How old am I?
Yeah,
40.
It's one of those things where you'll go through all these doors in your life where you basically sort of like, you just kind of like relinquish, like get rid of the skin. Mm-hmm. And that validation after a while, you sort of sit there just going, you know, there's still a little bit there, but it's not as important.
Yeah.
And the more you go through what you're doing, the more you sort of like go, okay, well, you know, I really just want to do it for myself. And if someone out there likes it, that's a fucking bonus. But other times it's sort of like, you know, you kind of want to just do it and close yourself off.
Yeah, there's a lot of letting go, because you look at the different stages that you go through, and a lot of people, they start their creative careers because there's this like natural inclination to create, right? So early on when you're a kid, and to break through from being that gifted creative child artist and getting praised for, you know, having this talent, because then the next part after that is having to grind shit out, right? And just to like, you're not going to be getting the praise for things working out now. What you have to be leaning on is praise internally for pushing through.
Well, I think it's also so like, yes, for earlier on in your career you get praised because you're always like, you know, you're doing something different and people haven't seen it before. But then it becomes second nature, so people have noticed it. Then you don't get that praise anymore, and you're sort of like going, but hang on, I want more. So you become kind of thirsty for that sort of like ego boost.
Is that part of the growth and the evolution though? Because, you know, that comes hand in hand with just growing and experiencing new things.
It does, because you start like, you kind of become like, in some ways, like I went through it where you get behind the eight ball. So you come back, I came back from overseas, was burnt out, and it was kind of like, you know, there's all these dudes who are doing amazing work, and I was sort of like, you know, I can't be bothered. I should actually take a step out, but I'm going to try and persist. So you try and catch up with everyone else, and you're trying to get that sort of adulation for what you're doing. But then after a while, you sit there just going, I've got to go off and reinvent myself. So, you know, you've got to take that time out and just go, you know what, the praise isn't important. It doesn't, like, it's not going to actually affect you at the end of the day. Because the thing is, it's like, as we spoke before, it's like you actually are creating a business for yourself.
Yeah.
So that part where basically you go, okay, well, that first part where it was all about the praise, and it's like, you're doing some great work, you're doing this, oh my goodness, that's great. Love your work. And then suddenly it's sort of that all goes away, and you sit there going, shit, where is everyone? And then you're behind the eight ball, and then you go away, reinvent yourself, and you go, okay, it's no longer about that. It's about creating something that I can actually sort of make a business for myself.
Yeah, that's a completely new layer that's been introduced into something that there's conflict and tension with it, right? Like if you're going to be creating something, you're not firstly thinking, how am I going to make a business out of this?
Oh no, it's not you're going, I'm going to make $1 million today.
So how do you introduce that element without compromising the work or the quality of the work, and what was the substance of it that actually got you in that place in the first place?
I think it's about discovery. I think people just sort of starting to rediscover your work. So you go through that period of time where, you know, everyone, you get forgotten. So everyone goes through it, like you get forgotten, and then suddenly, you know, you start doing something different again, and you start presenting it, and then different people come involved. So they sort of come in and sort of start recognizing your work and go, I like this. This is the different you. And you've matured in your work. You're no longer doing it as party tricks. So then suddenly you do get these people who start buying your work and sort of like looking at it and going, okay, well, we want to actually invest into this. So it is part of investment. So the more you put out there, the more you're the people who are investing in your work going, okay, well, this is the person we want to get behind.
How much do you consider the value of your work? Because when you're saying from a business sense, if you have this piece of work next to this piece of work and then the next one, you've created almost like an economy for yourself. You have given attached a value to it.
Yeah.
So as a piece of work, it's a creative piece of work. It's hard to put a price on it, but from a business point of view, you have to.
Yeah.
You put a price on it, but as you're creating more works, the value of the existing pieces starts to adjust, right?
Yeah.
So how does that play into how you create as well? Because if you have this natural urge to want to create lots of pieces, but then there's a point knowing that if I'm creating more, does it devalue the work?
Good point. Yeah. No. I think when creating the work, you've got to switch off and shut it all out.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if you start doing it just for that pure example, you're basically painting for the gallery. You're no longer painting for yourself. So you're no longer sort of creating something. You're only doing it just to chase the dollar. I wouldn't put on a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go down that path. I have actually met people in the past who have done that, and it doesn't end well.
No, I can't imagine it would.
It devalues everything.
Yeah.
I knew a guy back in early 2000s, and now you sort of see a lot of his work in op shops. So it's gone from really high to really low, and I think he's a nice addict now or something like that.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so he's really fucked up. And it's kind of like he was doing really well. Like there's some people who are still trying to keep his market going up, but it's kind of hard because he no longer like makes any work anymore, and his work has become it's dated for that early 2000s. So no, like $150 for a painting, sort of thing like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he oversaturated market, and that was in a very short period of time.
Right. Yeah, it is just a constant balancing act of understanding the business implications.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to, like, the other thing as well, you don't want to sort of go into a show and just do like 1 billion paintings and go, here you go. Because that's overwhelming. And again, to getting back to that whole thing of like choosing between music and art. So if you've got to actually sort of like, how can I say it, sort of like make it hone in on a skill. So you put more into one piece than you are putting over a body of work. Mm. So you're not trying to sort of go, okay, well, I'm going to sort of water that one down so I can create 10 more of them.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like make that the best.
Is there a sweet spot for the number of pieces that should be in a show?
I've done shows with 70 pieces in it, like small pieces, and that was exhausting. But then I've done shows where it's like 12 pieces, and that was fantastic because it's like, I put more effort into those works. I'm not saying I don't put effort into my work, but they were like, it's not. I'm not spreading myself too thin.
Mm. But then even with that, there's like the experiencing of the pieces is a big part of it.
Sometimes it's like, how can I say it? Like, it's like writing something. So sometimes you actually have the urge to write, and you just keep going. Mm-hmm. Or you're whatever you're into, you just keep going. It's like you're in this like really sort of happy spot where you just got to go, you know what, I've got so much going out, so you can actually literally do it. But then you look over it later on and go, oh, that looks a bit sucky. Yeah. So you start deleting some of the works and sort of going, what was I thinking there?
Yeah, exactly right. Because you could have a particular piece that overall just lowers the standard of the collection.
Yeah. I've had a couple of those where you have a kind of like a favorite in there, like you sit there going, I really want this to fucking work. Mm. And it's not going to, however way you put it, like you sit there just going, I really like the concept of it. It's really good, but it's like, it's just not working with the rest of it.
Mm. It happens in a lot of music as well, how they have like a track that doesn't make the cut for the album, but it was the one that like at an experimental piece.
Yeah, and you should listen to it later on. He's like, "That's so fucking cool."
Yeah.
But I can understand why they didn't put it together. It's a hard one. I've got like, I'm at the moment I'm thinking about this painting at home, which I've worked on. I really really like it, but I know that it's not working. And it kind of sucks because it's kind of like with the rest of the work, like I've got it all set up in my studio, so most of it's on the walls. So I'll go backwards and forwards and have a look at this and sort of go, I want to do some more to that, or add something so it looks like it's actually peeling off. But there's this one which has got eyes and a mouth, and it's been sprayed around the mouth, and it's all gold. And it's kind of like everything else, and then there's that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like just sticks out all the fucking time. You can't be too precious. If something's not working, you've either got to walk away from it for a little bit, which that's one thing I can't do. I'm like a fucking dog with a bone. Just won't let it go. And it's really, really fucking annoying.
You were just walking around this area. You were saying how for those that aren't familiar, we're in Fitzroy at the moment. You were saying like how that the scene here, it's changed quite a lot, you know. And we discussed about how like Melbourne, there is still a thriving creative community, but it's starting to disperse. How have you seen how the culture here in Melbourne has shifted, but also just broadly, I guess even on a global scale, because you've been everywhere as well, how visual paintings, the culture, I guess just the influences, how have you seen that's shifted over the generations?
I think the first thing is it's like you start seeing people disappearing, like they're moving out. It's like the scenes in Melbourne, like they've been pretty good. Like sort of say like the 90s where there wasn't like the early 90s where there wasn't really much going on, and then to this incredible high in the 2000s. Now it's actually sort of going down again or pittering out, I'll say, where you don't sort of see as much of the galleries. Like the galleries seem to be like closing faster than they are opening, and especially obviously down Gertrude Street. So what it was sort of, or what I used to have a studio up on Victoria Street, which used to be part of the old Goya Gallery. Mm-hmm. It's no longer there. No, like I think even my old studio, I think it's all turned into apartments. So you sort of see this whole thing where it's the artists are moving further and further and further out of the city because, well, for starters, they can't afford to live in this, as you probably know yourself. And their priorities are changing too. Like a lot of them are turning into parents or getting other priorities involved, and they can't sort of just focus simply on doing arts anymore, which is sad. And I don't think there's much in the way of venues these days, or as much as there was like big venues. It's like it's not as prestige as it used to be. Yeah,
I'd probably have to agree. For a community to thrive, there has to be some kind of framework, or like even like a runway, right? Like for artists to grow, if you're going to be firstly taking the leap, if you have decided from very early on, I want to become a professional artist, and then how you go about doing that is completely up to you and completely on you to discover. There is no handbook. Not saying that being too prescriptive with it is going to be helpful.
Yeah.
But it's just the resistance comes from an ease into doing other things instead.
I don't think that I think people will find a way of doing it for themselves, for starters. It's something to get financial support to do it. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, really.
Not even financial support to do it, but I guess it's just. So you look at the journey of an artist that goes from, let's say, high school, creating because they love it, and then you have that decision to make. Do you go to uni, or do you get a job? But where does it come in? My choice is to now pursue a professional arts career. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because,
I get you now.
yeah, and then because you have these pathways, and these ones, not to say that anything's guaranteed, but if you want to go down, a 9 to 5 corporate route, that avenue's paved for you.
Yeah.
If you want to pick up a trade, it's there for you. You want to go to uni and just to develop extracurricular or to develop your academics, that avenue's there.
I think it's with the arts, like it's always been about sort of kicking down the door. Like, as you said, it's like there's not really a path you can turn around and go, I got to go to school, I'm going to become an artist, then I'm going to go out, I'm going to get a job as a visual artist, and then later on down the track I'm going to retire, and there's going to be like a superannuation sitting there, and it's like and everything's great. I've just bought a house and blah blah blah.
Because you've gone through all that. You've seen the evolution of.
But it's also, it's like I kicked down a lot of doors. Like I got to meet the right people at the right time. It's like what someone probably has a completely different experience than what I have. Like I was meeting like owners of McDonald's and hanging out with the cultural advisor to Australia in New York. And they were getting me jobs, like not jobs, but getting me over to Germany and things like that. And it's like, it wasn't sort of just, it was the right people around the right time. So, basically it's sort of like, I don't think that would happen for everyone, but you seriously need to be going, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to see it through. I've got to do it for myself. Because someone else's career is going to be very different from my career, which it's kind of hard to do because it's like to speak about, because you don't want to sort of lay these seeds of like going, oh, okay, there's a big rainbow at the end of this, a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, I think it is, because there's not. There's some people will work for, and other people it won't. And it's surprising. So like sometimes it's people who are academic artists who have basically gone through these ranks, and other times it's those people who have had no training whatsoever, who have come into it, and maybe it's their blind sort of way of looking at it sort of has actually helped them go through it.
Maybe that's just what it is. Maybe that's the key ingredient, is just to be ignorant to the possibility of failure.
Yeah, and not backing down in a lot of ways. Because anything you choose, like even if you choose a business career, like a job in an office, I don't think it's going to be that easy there.
I think it's going to be. I think life is just hard no matter what.
Oh yeah.
Right, and you just choose the sort of hard that you want to have.
Yeah, like it's a matter of like going, I wish them the best, but at the moment, it's a hard thing to go. Okay, you know what? I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be an artist, because a lot of it's sort of about generations moving away from it, and then new generations coming into it. Yeah,
because so you have a society, you have a community where creatives thrive, but if there is no need, if there's no desire for that creativity, then it'll start to dilute. And if it dilutes, it's really hard to get people invested into that.
Yeah.
And you're starting to see how it's moving away, and there are all these hubs that are popping up in different areas, but with less concentration. So the onus is back on the individual to then just do it all entirely on their own.
I think one of the good analogies, man, is like the music. So if like late 90s, early 2000s, how many people were starting bands?
Yeah.
Like how many people were going, I want to do that. And it didn't matter, like, that they were sitting there just going, I'm going to get a record contract, or like, I want to do that. That's my voice.
I think a lot of it has to do with, you see the success story of one, then another, and another, and you think, shit, that could be me. And that's what I mean about having, like, there's a desire for it within a community.
Yeah.
Right? Like in the 90s when you're seeing, like, say, oh, geez, the list of bands is endless, right? Like, but then you see that pathway and you think, I could be that. I could do that.
Yeah.
And whether or not you will is just giving you that drive to be able to do it. So I think that like this day and age, not to say that there are fewer examples of that. I think there are far greater examples, but I think that it's just more spread. And I think that like there's, you know, back to when we were talking about labels, I don't think that people necessarily fit into these pigeonholes anymore. I think it's just you break away, you take down the labels, and you have creatives that just create, and it just so happens that they're doing this, or it just so happens they're a little bit more left of that. So I think that maybe that once upon a time when there was these visual artists and galleries that were in abundance, especially around this area, there might be fewer of them because it's not just, there are different avenues and there are different outlets to create now.
Well, getting back to it's like Instagram and all those sort of online, like that became the gallery.
Yeah, that's the gallery. Yeah.
So it sort of took away, but you know, like anything, it's sort of there's always that full circle that you know you kind of hope that something new is about to come around the corner.
I think that's just how it is. It always does. You know, when you move away from something, and especially in the digital era, if we're moving towards that, what are we losing?
Yeah.
Right? And then I think what we're losing is that tactile, that tangibility, and that experience of being in front of an art piece.
Isn't it like best analogy would probably be vinyl records.
Yeah.
How much has that come around a full circle to where people have become obsessed?
And books as well.
Exactly.
So we want to feel it. We want to connect with it in that way.
Something more human.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that it's like I was actually having a chat with this lady a couple of weeks ago, and she was sort of talking about AI, and she's sort of saying how do you feel about AI coming in? It was just like going, well, actually, I don't really. I don't think it really matters. And it's kind of like what do I think is because AI is not sentimental.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
We've got this sentimental quality where we're basically sort of like, you know, we'll go for that vinyl because it's got that ageless quality to it.
Yeah.
And as you know, those books where we put on our shelves and we go, I read that. And it's got that ageless quality, and some people like the smell of it, weirdos. But
of the op shop.
Yeah, they go in the op shop and sort of pick up a book. But
I completely agree, man. I think that's something that's not spoken enough about is the positive gains that we get as humanity with the rise of AI. You know, that we connect with each other knowing and familiar with flaws and all.
Yeah.
Right? We resonate with that. We are that, so we connect with that. When something's just too polished and too clean.
Well, look at modern films now. Like everything in the screen has become so clean.
Yeah.
Like everything is so precise. So it's like, you know, every blade of grass is perfect green, or the sky is perfect blue. People don't get into it anymore.
Yeah, it's hard to capture some of those nuances. I was reading this article about how, you know, you have these AI that can recreate these performances, but there's going to be a lot of nuances that they might not think to capture. And one of them was they used this example of this actress when she was sitting down and how she adjusted her skirt as she sat down, and it was just that little tiny human element to how she kind of maneuvered on that seat. And we saw it and we don't think anything of it. But if you take away all of that, all those little nuances, then we will realize that it's not human anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not about trying to create something more polished. It's then going to be on AI to create something that's less polished.
Do you feel it's like okay? So talking about the vinyl and all that sort of stuff. Do you think that the next step is basically theatre, like people going back to the theatres and watching stage productions?
You know what? I don't think it's a matter of going back. I don't think people have ever left.
True.
Yeah, I think with the stage productions, they're always going to be thriving for that reason.
But do you think there's going to be a lot more popularity towards it?
Maybe. That's a good point.
Because it's like you're looking at a lot of pushback with sort of like Hollywood. Like people are really sort of like, you're spending like billions of dollars on films. You know, there's this whole saying, it's like you don't put your own money into film. So where are they borrowing the money from?
That's a good point.
You know, they're borrowing it from the banks.
Yeah.
So that's what's bringing down the economy.
That's, you know what? And each one of these movies that are making, it costing like $1 billion. And who decides that? Who decides that this is going to be $1 billion? Firstly, who decides all the little, you know, when you break down the invoice, who decides how much that cost? And then once you have that accumulation, who then signs off saying, yeah, this is a good idea?
Productions, man.
Yeah. No, they've, it's, as works of art, those big blockbusters, the ones that they're spending a lot of money on, they're losing a lot of the resonance because they are trying to appeal to the masses, right? So once you spread yourself so thin and you try to cast a broad net, no one's really going to care. No one's going to resonate with that.
That's the thing. It's like you're putting too many fingers in too many pies. God,
Yeah.
Old man analogies. Fuck.
The kids won't get it.
But it's that whole thing. It's like, you know, they've just really sort of trying that appeal. It doesn't work. And they're sort of like trying to worry about what other people think.
Yeah. So as an artist, I think it's integral to then just try to look as introspectively as possible. And back to what we were saying about taking influences and trends, they're going to influence you, but it's important for you to try to figure out who you are and how you can put that into your work.
Yeah, true. But also, it's like, I think probably about 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot of influence and trends, but I think the more it goes, the less the trends and influences go, because they're no longer talking to me, the trends. It's marketed towards a younger audience.
Yeah.
So
and they're definitely working differently as well. The trends is there to capture an audience really quick, milk it, and then abandon it.
Yeah.
So there is, and then what's great about that sucks. But what's great about the flip side of that is that what that'll be driving is a desire for more meaningful type of creations.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you got so much in your life that's fleeting, you want something that's just more grounded. You want something that's just that has more sentiment to it.
It's also like I've noticed with a lot of my clients, I'm having a lot more of a personal relationship with them. Like it's no longer sort of like, oh, you know, I want to get that work because that's that person. It's just building a personal relationship with people. And it's through visual arts. Like I have great conversations with people like Colin, because it's sort of like he likes what I do. I wouldn't say investment, because it's completely, that's sort of like kind of a bit shallow, but it's a personal connection to him and his husband, which I like that kind of thing. Like you know, there's a couple of other people I actually would say that I have that personal connection with. Mm-hmm. Which gets into that sort of thing. Like we are now wanting more connection with people than we do before. Where
absolutely.
Everything's just like zoom, 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 just passing by.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and you know, when you have that piece of work, a Josh Lord piece, and you know who he is personally, it adds more value to that. And I don't mean monetary value.
I was going to say, it's like, you can't get me out of your life.
Yeah, you're there. You're going to be the first thing they see every time that they walk out, you know, walk into their room, into the house. But no, 100%, man. And this day and age that we're in with technology, I believe that it creates more opportunity for artists to create more authentically.
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. I think it is that polar opposite. I think a lot of people want to move away from that sort of like digital synthetic world, and sort of look at it and go, okay, well, I want to do something real, but I also want to talk about that as well, because it's kind of like we've become our own matrix. we've sort of become exactly what we didn't want to do. With the doom culture, it's very ironic. Like even to the point where you listen to OK Computer by Radiohead and you're sort of going, fuck, So close to home.
I think it was something that we could foresee happening, and we're there. Well, no, we're not there, but we're definitely on the way there. And
We're on
I
the
think
path.
we're on the path, and I think that this is where we have that lens to be able to, just to look retrospectively. Is like, this is where we were, this is where we thought we were going to be, and we're like right here now. Let's just not let this get out of control.
I think with a lot of artists, they should actually look at going against the grain.
Always.
And then actually sort of like, use their voice to go, okay, well, it doesn't have to be obvious. It can actually be a little bit subversive. And sort of going, okay, well, have a look at this because obviously this is what's happening or this is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's the whole point of it is to both be a mirror of culture, but also to then try to push it and steer it in different ways, right?
One of the things I try and look at within my work is this sort of like futurology, where it's sort of like what your show, Future History, is basically a literary term, which basically placing something in the future and giving it backstory. And that's what I'm looking to do with these works, is sort of making it look like it's actually somewhere far in the future. And we've gone through that technology, but we've gone back to a tribalistic sort of state, but we've kept on with the technology in there as well. So you've got these sort of like bits and pieces of things going on, like you've got horns on top of skulls, but you've got basically analog world attacks. I wanted to try and sort of combine that sort of like what a fantasy.
Mad Max-esque.
Yeah. Mad Max, Blade Runner.
Yeah.
I really like the Blade Runner world, by the way. I think we had this conversation.
Yeah.
It's that building of a future which basically, or a nostalgia for a future we never got to live.
I like that.
And we've created this world where basically it's sort of like, I've taken elements, that's what, the totem pole with the glitch screens, it was like that whole Blade Runner sort of feel to it, where it's basically it actually has Rachel in it glitching.
Oh, so it was Rachel?
Yeah, it was Rachel in it. So using sort of the motifs like obviously the unicorn and things like that, but sort of like this used world, the used future. And I like that sort of capture. Now I'm actually sort of with the new works, I'm sort of looking at that again, but sort of trying to give that sort of religious iconography without it being religious.
Yeah, I get you. I like that.
So I don't want to sort of do like going, oh, pictures of Jesus, yay, cool, man. I want it to actually sort of have that sort of roundabout sort of kind of way, like a lot of my work. I don't want it to be going, oh, that's that. It's got to be sort of like a roundabout, subversive sort of thing.
Alluding to it.
Yeah, alluding to it. And I think that artists that are sort of coming up the ranks now, sort of like they're going through that period of like going, oh, I can paint, I can draw, I can do this. And they're doing that pinpoint, but you can start seeing the alluding part coming into it, which is really cool to sort of see, like, using text, writing. Some are a bit more mature than others, some aren't. And it's kind of interesting to see what might actually eventuate for them, because maybe there is going to be a new renaissance.
It has to be. It always is.
Yeah, because as soon as you go push against the grain, you sort of see this sort of like, what would you say, soft totalitarianism that we're going through.
Soft totalitarianism. I like that.
There are going to be people who are going to go, you know what, I don't dig it.
Yeah.
I don't like it. This is not the future I want. And they're going to look towards science fiction, because science fiction is probably one of the better qualities of going, okay, well, there's the possibilities. And what might happen, like, Philip K. Dick, Aldous Huxley, right through to Isaac Asimov.
Asimov, yeah.
Instead of, looking at those and going, okay, well, I can create my own future.
Yeah.
Fuck what everyone else is doing.
That's the idea. And to what you were saying, that's the idea of right now and having conversations like this, is that we are meant to be casting off the ripple effect.
Yeah.
To influence the future that we want.
Yeah, or give them something to go, don't want to do that.
Or it could be like with yours, when you were saying that creating a future that we, creating some sort of a sense of nostalgia that we haven't experienced.
Yeah.
But it could also be the other way around, where it's more self-prophesizing, and then you're ultimately by creating the work, you're creating the future that gets us to that point.
Well, this where it's like going to the Egyptian sort of motifs is because it's kind of like, are we going to be like Egypt in like a couple of thousand years?
Yeah, maybe. I know
like,
what you mean.
Like this also why I'm sort of got that sort of kind of religious motif to it without it being religious is because when we came across all that, we looked for religious eyes. So what's the future going to hold in us? So are they going to turn around and go, this Apple Mac logo, is that like a Christian religion? This Samsung, oh my God, that was like a tribe.
They're going to just see there's going to be trillions of phones everywhere and they're going to be just wondering, what the fuck?
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe aliens and maybe us in like we might actually go through another cataclysm. Or like, well, not cataclysm. What's the word?
Of just what the demise of humanity in a rebuild.
Yeah.
Yeah, that cataclysm would be it.
Yeah, sort of like, you know, obviously the dinosaurs got wiped out. How about us?
Maybe there'll just be another iteration, just wipe out, you know, a good sun flare kills off technology and
yeah, well, then we have to start again.
start making tools. So right now you're working on an exhibition that is out
October next year.
Next year.
Yeah, I'm taking a full on time to actually build this because I'm a bit more ambitious.
Cool.
So I want to create sort of these works which basically aren't just like paintings, they're combines or Robert Rauschenberg sort of thing, and movable parts, which is
pushing boundaries.
Yeah, and then basically I got to sit down with my friend Ash and sort of work on sounds for it.
Oh, nice.
And hopefully I can play live there. It'll be so much fun.
That'll be something worth exploring, man. I like the idea of multi-sensory type experiences. I love it. October next year. In the meantime, people can catch you on socials.
Yeah, I think I'll just be putting up a lot of old stuff. Like, I went through a bit of reminiscence after speaking to you, sort of going, shit, look at that.
Some good shit there.
Yeah. Wow. All this old work. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, man. Hey, dude, I love your work, man. And
Thanks,
I
dude.
really appreciate connecting with you and just having these conversations. There's a lot of value out of these. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, bro.